Joining me now is former Congressman Lee Zeldin. Lee, it is great to have you back.
It's great to be back.
Should I call you Congressman or Lee? What would you rather?
Call me Lee. Call me whatever you want.
So let's talk about this New York Post interview. What do you mean by a robust Republican field?
I think a lot of people are going to get in. It's going to be a spirited primary and a spirited race. And for the average person who's out there in the public, they care about issues like the economy and national security. In the Republican Party, they'll talk a lot about the border. Fentanyl comes up with both parties, and independence as well, and it's as personal as it gets, and education. If you get into that negative, which is inevitable, and it ends up carrying past the primary towards a general election, then it can adversely impact your eventual nominee. It's going to be important, and this would apply to either party. When you have that spirited race, you have to come out of that race as united as possible, or it can really hurt your chances.
Is it a tacit admission that Donald Trump's not the best candidate for the Republican Party?
Well, first off, if he's the nominee, that wouldn't be a problem with him, right? Because he's the nominee. If he's not the nominee, then that becomes more of a dynamic of how does he react, because his followers are very loyal to him. And if he is saying we absolutely must support nominee X, then his followers will get behind that person.
Yeah.
But if he doesn't, or maybe even says I'm still running, then many of his followers will follow him straight to November
claims fraud
elections.
and say he actually won when he did not.
He has a loyal, I don't know what the number is, but let's say of the Republican primary field, he might have 35% solidly behind him, give or take. So when a Nikki Haley gets into the race, I would actually say that pulls more from a Ron DeSantis than it does a Donald Trump. As the field gets bigger, I think in a way that somehow plays to his advantage, because he has that solid number of people who will be with him no matter what from today until the end of time.
Well, let me ask you about some of the Donald Trump's behavior, I guess you could call it, in the past few days. The social media posts attacking Ron DeSantis. I'll put it up on the screen. He insinuated that DeSantis might have groomed young women, insinuated he might be gay. I mean, this is the sort of stuff that voters rejected in 2018, 2020, 2022. I mean, Donald Trump lost in 2020, and in 2018 and 2022, Republicans didn't do well, certainly in 2018, didn't do as well as they wanted in 2022. Is it good for the party to keep having him around?
So, well, first off, he's clearly the favorite at this point of all the polls that are coming out. You just referenced a few minutes ago one of those polls that show him with a clear lead.
But does he gain voters? I mean, he has that support, that base, as you said. Are there independents and moderates that will say yes?
In a primary, it's proven to be a tactic that works, whether you agree with it or not. In 2016, he filleted the field by going hardcore one after another, just knocking these top targets out. Ron DeSantis is clearly his top choice.
But the primary is half the battle. You need the general. You need the general public to vote for you.
And I think that the general public is more turned off by that. When you go to independents, you want to win over Democrats. They want to see us talking about, and this applies for independents regardless of whether you're Republican or Democrat, they care about upward economic mobility. They want a strong country. They see the banks collapsing over the course of the last week or two, and they want to know what you're going to do about it. There's no question, regardless of whoever the candidate is we are discussing, the best way to appeal to them is to talk about issues that are most important to them. We saw it in our race for governor last year. When I was going to Democratic groups, Democratic communities, we won the Asian American vote, the Orthodox Jewish vote, the Dominican vote. Why? It was because when I was showing up there, we were talking about the safety on their streets. They want to know, well, what's your solution, or the quality of education.
I think
in their
that's
school.
fair, but can you have that conversation when Donald Trump is, screaming to the high heavens, calling other Republicans names, or, saying that the entire government, the entire system is out to get him because of indictment X or indictment Y?
Well, from the legal standpoint, he's going to fight, and I understand why he's doing that. And by the way,
makes it a big issue.
I think that, by the way, we'll see how things play out in the coming days and weeks. But there's a possibility that what's happening inside of New York County, inside of Manhattan, might actually end up making him stronger in a way.
With the base, but does it get him moderates? Does it get him independents?
So I think that there are a lot of people who see this as a political investigation. They've seen the Department of Justice had passed on that the FEC has jurisdiction over federal campaign violations.
But even if they think he's unfairly targeted, aren't they going to look for somebody who's not going to be embroiled in so much of this? Somebody who won't be in the middle of all of this all of the time?
I don't. Well, the answer is we don't know yet how it impacts him as far as independents go. We also don't know exactly how it'll play out. I do think that what Alvin Bragg is doing for a lot of people just not passing a smell test, it's coming across as political to many, not just Republican primary voters.
Let me ask you this. Is DeSantis a better candidate for the Republican Party? He's got all the same policies as Donald Trump and more. He's MAGA on steroids. Is he a better candidate for the Republican Party?
If he gets in the race, and it seems like he's shaping up to become a candidate, it's about what type of a campaign he runs. What are the policies that he's going to be campaigning on? How is he going to do with the debates? How well will he organize? I would say that there's plenty of potential for a Governor Ron DeSantis to be an extraordinary Republican presidential candidate and maybe even a president. I served with Ron in the House. We served together in the House Foreign Affairs Committee. I think he's great. But with any potential candidate, we've seen this. I remember Fred Thompson in 2008, Rick Perry in 2012, Michael Bloomberg in 2020. You come into the race, there's high hopes, maybe you're even in first place. You debut at a debate, and then all of a sudden your campaign flames out. It's a whole other level campaigning at the presidential level. Exactly. And it all depends on how who maybe you were a fantastic candidate at one level, it's how well you rise to that next level, and we have to see once the pressure is on, once
Lee Zeldin.
the flashlight